trust erodes and skepticism takes its place. Consider the world of business. Consumers trust brands that consistently deliver high-quality products, competence, uphold ethical values, integrity, and prioritize customer well-being over pure profit, benevolence. The same applies to leadership. Employees trust leaders who demonstrate expertise, transparency, and a genuine concern for their team's welfare. Those who violate these pillars of trust, whether through deception, inconsistency, or selfishness, face irreparable reputational damage. The power of reciprocity. Why giving first creates influence. Reciprocity is one of the strongest forces driving human interactions. When someone does us a favor, we feel compelled, almost obligated, to return the gesture. This principle is so deeply ingrained that it functions even when the original giver expects nothing in return. The simple act of giving, whether tangible or intangible, creates an invisible debt that influences behavior. Marketers, negotiators, and leaders strategically harness reciprocity to build lasting influence. Consider the classic example of the free sample effect. When people receive something for free, they are far more likely to make a purchase, even if they had no initial intention to do so. This is why high-end cosmetics brands offer free trials, why charities send small gifts with donation requests, and why professionals freely share valuable insights before pitching their services. The act of giving activates the reciprocity principle, making the recipient more inclined to return the favor. Beyond business, reciprocity shapes personal and professional relationships. Leaders who invest in their employees through mentorship, recognition, and opportunities earn loyalty in return. People who show kindness, generosity, and thoughtfulness naturally attract goodwill, deepening relationships and expanding their sphere of influence. The key is giving without expectation. A genuine gesture of goodwill carries more power than one that transparently demands repayment. Building trust. Through consistency and authenticity. Trust is not established overnight. It is cultivated through consistency. The human brain is wired to seek patterns. When someone behaves reliably over time, we categorize them as trustworthy. Conversely, inconsistency breeds doubt, making us question motives and reliability. This is why brands invest heavily in maintaining consistent messaging, customer experience, and product quality. A brand that fluctuates in reliability loses consumer trust quickly. The same applies to personal credibility. People trust individuals who consistently align their words with their actions, reinforcing their integrity through repeated behavior. Authenticity is another crucial factor in trust building. People can detect insincerity almost instinctively. Attempts to manipulate or feign concern are often met with resistance. The key to authenticity is alignment. When your values, actions, and communication all reflect a unified and honest intention, trust follows naturally. Leaders who openly admit mistakes, brands that acknowledge shortcomings, and individuals who speak with transparency are far more likely to sustain trust over the long term. Repairing broken trust, the path to redemption. Once trust is broken, restoring it is one of the most challenging feats of influence. People have a natural negativity bias. One betrayal often outweighs a dozen positive experiences. However, trust can be repaired with the right approach. The first step in restoring trust is acknowledgement. Denying wrongdoing or making excuses only deepens distrust. A sincere admission of failure, paired with accountability, demonstrates integrity. The second step is visible corrective action. Words alone do not restore trust. Actions must reinforce a genuine commitment to change. The final step is consistency over time. Trust does not return instantly. It must be rebuilt through sustained reliability. Consider companies that experience PR crises. Those that issue empty apologies without concrete action often face prolonged consumer backlash. However, those that take decisive steps, whether through compensation, policy changes or leadership shifts gradually regain credibility. The same applies to personal relationships, whether in friendships, business, or leadership. Trust can only be restored through actions that repeatedly demonstrate sincerity and responsibility. The long-term power of trust-based influence? Influence built on manipulation is temporary. Influence built on trust is lasting. When people trust you, they do not need to be persuaded repeatedly. They willingly follow, support, and advocate on your behalf. A trusted individual or brand does not need to employ aggressive persuasion tactics because their reputation alone carries weight. This is why the most successful leaders, businesses, and influencers prioritize trust over short-term gains. Those who operate with integrity, consistency, and reciprocity create networks of loyalty that sustain influence over a lifetime. The best salespeople are not those who pressure customers into buying once, but those who build relationships that lead to repeat business and referrals. The best leaders are not those who demand obedience, but those who inspire commitment through trust. Understanding the psychology of trust and reciprocity allows you to cultivate influence that endures. By giving first, acting with integrity, and maintaining consistency, you create an ecosystem where others naturally seek your guidance, respect your expertise, and advocate on your behalf. Trust is the currency of influence. Invest in it wisely, and it will yield dividends far beyond any persuasive tactic alone. As we have explored in this chapter, trust and reciprocity form the bedrock of enduring influence. Without trust, persuasion is fleeting, and without reciprocity, relationships lack depth. Those who master these principles do not merely convince, they inspire, lead, and create movements that endure. Chapter 11. The Psychology of Social Proof and Conformity. Why people follow the crowd? Humans are inherently social creatures. From the earliest days of civilization, survival depended on being part of a group. Those who stood alone were more vulnerable to predators, starvation, and danger. This evolutionary reality has hardwired into our brains a deep-rooted instinct to look to others for guidance, validation, and decision-making cues. Whether we recognize it or not, much of our behavior is dictated not by independent thought, but by the influence of those around us. This is the foundation of social proof, the psychological phenomenon where people assume that the actions of others indicate the correct course of action. Social proof governs everything from the brands we trust to the choices we make in unfamiliar situations. It is why people check online reviews before purchasing a product, why nightclubs maintain long lines outside their doors to signal popularity, and why social media influencers hold tremendous sway over consumer behavior. The human brain, when faced with uncertainty, instinctively seeks reassurance from the collective. The larger the number of people endorsing an idea, the more credible it appears. In this chapter, we will explore the psychology behind social proof and conformity, how it influences behavior, why it can override logic, and how it can be leveraged to shape decisions, create mass movements, and establish authority. By understanding these principles, you can strategically position yourself, your brand, or your ideas in a way that compels people to follow without resistance. The science of social proof. Why we trust the crowd. The power of social proof is rooted in cognitive efficiency. The brain is constantly seeking shortcuts to avoid unnecessary effort. Evaluating every situation from scratch would be mentally exhausting. Instead, we rely on external cues, particularly the behavior of others, to guide our decisions. This phenomenon is especially pronounced in unfamiliar or ambiguous situations, where we lack personal experience to determine the best course of action. One of the most famous experiments demonstrating social proof is Solomon Asch's conformity study. In the 1950s, Ash showed groups of participants a series of lines and asked them to identify which line was the longest. The task was simple, and the correct answer was obvious. However, when placed in a group where others deliberately gave incorrect answers, most participants conformed to the wrong choice, even when it contradicted what they clearly saw. This experiment highlighted the immense pressure people feel to align with the group, even when the group is objectively incorrect. Social proof is so powerful that it can override individual logic, ethics, and personal preferences. It explains why fads take hold, why misinformation spreads rapidly, and why people imitate behaviors they see others engaging in, whether those behaviors are beneficial or harmful. The need to belong and be part of the in-group often outweighs rational analysis. The different forms of social proof. Social proof is not a single phenomenon. It manifests in various forms, each exerting influence in different ways. Understanding these variations allows you to harness them strategically. 1. Expert social proof. When an authority figure endorses something, people naturally trust it more. This is why brands hire doctors to promote health products, why TED speakers are perceived as thought leaders, and why academic credentials increase credibility. The assumption is that experts possess superior knowledge, making their endorsement more persuasive. 2. Celebrity social proof. People are drawn to status and influence. When a celebrity endorses a product, service, or idea, it gains social value simply by association. This is why major companies invest heavily in celebrity sponsorships. Fans subconsciously link their admiration for the celebrity to the endorsed product, making them more likely to adopt it. 3. User social proof. The most powerful social proof often comes from peers rather than authority figures. Customer testimonials, online reviews, and social media recommendations influence purchasing behavior more than traditional advertising. When people see others like themselves endorsing something, it feels authentic and relatable. 4. Crowd social proof. The larger the number of people engaging in a behavior, the more compelling it becomes. This is why social media platforms emphasize follower counts, why businesses highlight millions of satisfied customers, and why live audiences in television shows are instructed to laugh on cue, because laughter is contagious. 5. Situational social proof. In moments of uncertainty, people instinctively mimic the behavior of those around them. If you walk into a restaurant and see everyone ordering a specific dish, you are more likely to assume it is the best option. This effect is particularly strong in crisis situations. When individuals are unsure how to act, they defer to the actions of the majority. By leveraging these different forms of social proof, individuals and organizations can shape perception, build credibility, and increase influence in virtually any domain. The dark side of social proof. When conformity becomes dangerous. While social proof is a powerful tool for influence, it also has a dark side. The same mechanism that compels people to follow positive trends can also lead them down dangerous paths. Mass hysteria, financial bubbles, cult behavior, and mob mentality all stem from the same psychological process that makes social proof so compelling. The bystander effect is one of the most infamous examples of social proof gone wrong. When individuals witness an emergency in a public setting, they often fail to intervene because they assume that if others are not reacting, there is no need to act. The diffusion of responsibility causes paralysis. Everyone assumes someone else will step in, leading to collective inaction. Similarly, social proof fuels groupthink, where critical thinking is suppressed in favor of maintaining harmony within a group. This phenomenon has been responsible for some of history's greatest disasters, from corporate collapses to flawed military strategies. when dissenting voices are silenced due to fear of standing apart. Bad decisions go unchallenged, and failure becomes inevitable. Recognizing the dangers of blind conformity is crucial. True influence is not about exploiting social proof recklessly, but understanding its effects and using it responsibly. Leveraging social proof for influence and authority. Those who understand social proof can use it to create credibility, attract followers, and establish dominance in their field. Here's how. 1. Build visible momentum. People follow what appears popular, increasing social engagement, highlighting large customer bases, and showcasing positive testimonials all create an illusion of widespread approval, drawing more people in. 2. Associate with authority figures. If you lack direct authority, align with those who have it. Collaborations with respected experts, endorsements from influencers, and affiliations with prestigious institutions enhance perceived credibility. 3. Showcase community participation. People are more likely to engage when they see others doing the same. Encouraging user-generated content, displaying real-time engagement metrics, and emphasizing collective participation can create a sense of belonging. 4. Use exclusivity to amplify demand. Scarcity and social proof go hand in hand. When something is perceived as exclusive, demand increases. Limited edition products, invitation-only access, and insider communities enhance desirability by making participation feel like a privilege. 5. Encourage early adopters to advocate. The first followers of any movement play a crucial role in attracting the masses. Cultivating a loyal base of early adopters and empowering them to spread the message creates a ripple effect that fuels exponential growth. Social proof is one of the most potent psychological forces shaping human behavior. It dictates how trends emerge, how brands rise to dominance, and how leaders establish authority. Those who wield it effectively can guide public perception, generate influence, and build lasting credibility. However, with great power comes responsibility. Understanding social proof is not just about leveraging it, but also recognizing its risks. Chapter 12. The Psychology of Scarcity and Urgency. How limited availability drives action. Scarcity is one of the most powerful motivators in human psychology. When something becomes less available, it instantly increases in perceived value. Whether it's a rare artifact, a limited time offer, or an exclusive event, scarcity triggers a deep-seated fear of missing out, a psychological phenomenon known as FOMO, fear of missing out. This fear can override rational decision-making, compelling people to act impulsively to secure what they believe is slipping from their grasp. Urgency, a close psychological cousin to scarcity, adds a time-sensitive element to the equation. While scarcity emphasizes the limited quantity of an item, urgency emphasizes the limited time available to act. When the brain perceives a deadline, it shifts into action mode, pushing aside hesitation and deliberation. Marketers, salespeople, and influencers have long harnessed this principle to drive conversions, increase demand, and accelerate decision-making. Understanding the psychology of scarcity and urgency allows you to strategically shape perception, influence behavior, and create compelling offers that people feel compelled to act upon. In this chapter, we will explore why scarcity and urgency are so effective, how they alter cognitive processes, and how you can ethically use them to enhance influence in any domain. Why scarcity increases. Perceived value scarcity operates on a simple yet profound principle. People want what they cannot easily have. This principle is deeply ingrained in human nature. When resources are abundant, they are taken for granted, but when they become rare, they are suddenly seen as precious and desirable. The psychology behind this effect is rooted in reactance theory, a concept developed by psychologist Jack Bream. Reactance occurs when people perceive their freedom to choose as being threatened. When access to something is restricted or limited, the brain instinctively rebels against this limitation, making the restricted item even more appealing. This is why children often want a toy more after being told they can't have it, and why people value discontinued products more highly than those readily available. In business, scarcity is used to enhance perceived value in numerous ways. Luxury brands deliberately limit production runs to maintain exclusivity. Limited edition sneakers sell out in minutes because collectors know they won't get a second chance. Even digital products, which are technically infinite, are often presented as available for a limited time to create a sense of urgency. The mere perception that something is running out makes it infinitely more desirable. The fear of missing out, FOMO, and its influence on decision-making. FOMO is a psychological phenomenon that has become especially prevalent in the digital age. Social media constantly exposes people to experiences, products, and events that others are enjoying, making them acutely aware of what they might be missing out on. This awareness triggers an emotional response that drives people to take action, often impulsively, to avoid the discomfort of exclusion. Marketers use FOMO to great effect by creating social scarcity, the idea that everyone else is getting access to something while the individual is at risk of being left behind. Flash sales, exclusive membership programs, and limited-time bonuses all tap into this instinct. Events that are advertised as selling out fast create a rush of demand as people scramble to secure their spot before it's too late. Even content creators use FOMO when influencers post about exclusive events, limited edition products, or trending experiences. Their audience feels an increased urgency to participate. FOMO is particularly effective when combined with social proof. Seeing others act on an opportunity amplifies the sense of urgency. A restaurant with a long wait list is perceived as more desirable. A product labeled "only 3 left in stock" immediately becomes more attractive. When people believe others are securing an opportunity, they feel a heightened need to act before it's too late. Urgency, the brain's response to imminent deadlines. Urgency functions similarly to scarcity, but rather than focusing on quantity, it leverages time pressure to accelerate decision-making. The human brain is naturally wired to prioritize immediate concerns over long-term ones. This is known as temporal discounting. When a deadline is imposed, the brain categorizes the decision as urgent, prompting swift action. This is why limited-time sales, countdown timers, and expiring offers are so effective. When people believe they only have a short window to act, they are less likely to overanalyze and more likely to commit. Studies show that time-limited promotions increase conversion rates significantly, even when the product itself is not inherently scarce. The simple presence of a deadline triggers an emotional response that compels immediate action. The airline industry uses urgency masterfully. Flight prices are displayed with warnings like, "Only a few seats left at this price." Booking platforms like Expedia and Airbnb highlight, "X people are looking at this property right now," to accelerate decisions. The goal is to prevent deliberation and drive action before rational hesitation sets in. The different types of scarcity and urgency. Scarcity and urgency can be applied in multiple ways, depending on the psychological trigger you want to activate. 1. Limited quantity. Scarcity. When people believe an item is running out, they act quickly. This is why collectors' items, luxury watches, and limited edition sneakers generate massive demand. The fewer the items available, the higher their perceived value. 2. Limited time scarcity. Temporary availability creates urgency. Holiday sales, early bird discounts, and one-day-only deals capitalize on this principle by forcing immediate decisions. 3. Exclusive access scarcity. VIP memberships, waitlists, and invitation-only events create demand by making access feel privileged. When people believe they are part of a select few who can participate, they value the opportunity more. 4. Competitive scarcity. When people know others are actively competing for the same resource, their desire intensifies. Online auctions, live ticket sales, and real-time bidding wars trigger this psychological effect by making people feel they must act faster than others to secure what they want. How to use scarcity and urgency ethically. While scarcity and urgency are powerful, they should be used responsibly. False scarcity, such as artificially limiting stock when more is available, can damage credibility if customers feel deceived. The key to ethical influence is authentic scarcity, ensuring that limitations are real, justified, and aligned with the value being offered. 1. Be transparent. If a sale is truly limited time, communicate why. If a product is in limited supply, explain the reason, e.g., handcrafted in small batches, rather than only 3 left. 2. Provide value first. Scarcity should enhance an offer, not be the only reason people want it. A great product or service should stand on its own merits, with scarcity acting as a reinforcement rather than a gimmick. 3. Avoid pressure tactics. Creating urgency should encourage action, but it should not induce anxiety or regret. Ethical urgency empowers customers to make confident decisions, rather than feel manipulated into impulse buys. When used correctly, scarcity and urgency enhance rather than exploit. They make experiences more meaningful, drive engagement, and create excitement around an offer. Scarcity and urgency tap into some of the most primal aspects of human psychology. They create an instinctive need to act, driving sales, increasing demand, and influencing behavior in ways that logic alone cannot. When people perceive something as rare, exclusive, or fleeting, they naturally place greater value on it. Understanding these principles allows you to craft compelling offers, increase engagement, and establish authority in any domain. Whether you're launching a product, building a brand, or leading a movement, scarcity and urgency can transform passive interest into decisive action. Chapter 13. The Psychology of Commitment and Consistency. How small actions lead to lasting influence. In the vast landscape of psychological influence, few principles are as enduring and powerful as commitment and consistency. These two forces shape our decisions, reinforce our beliefs, and dictate our behavior in ways both subtle and profound. Human beings have a deep-seated need to align their actions with their self-image, past choices, and public declarations. Once a person takes an initial step, no matter how small, toward a particular course of action, they become far more likely to follow through with larger actions that are consistent with their previous decision. This psychological principle, studied extensively by social psychologists, is one of the primary reasons why persuasion does not always require forceful arguments or grand gestures. Instead, it thrives on small voluntary commitments that pave the way for larger, more meaningful actions. The power of commitment and consistency is seen everywhere, from sales tactics and political campaigns to personal habits and long-term relationships. Once a person states a preference, signs a petition, or agrees to a seemingly minor request, they begin to see themselves as the kind of person who supports that cause or behaves in that manner. This shift in self-perception influences future actions, often leading people to make significant commitments without feeling pressured. Whether it's a simple pledge to reduce plastic use evolving into full environmental activism, or a small financial investment leading to a lifelong brand loyalty, commitment and consistency shape our behaviors in ways we rarely notice. By understanding how these forces work, you can guide people's decisions, create lasting influence, and even shape their identities over time. In this chapter, we will explore why people strive for consistency, how small commitments lead to powerful transformations, and how this principle can be ethically harnessed to drive engagement, loyalty, and persuasion. Why people strive for consistency. At its core, the need for consistency is rooted in cognitive dissonance theory, first introduced by psychologist Leon Festinger. Cognitive dissonance occurs when a person's actions, beliefs, or values are in conflict with one another, creating an internal state of discomfort. To resolve this discomfort, individuals seek to align their thoughts and behaviors, making decisions that reinforce their previous choices rather than contradict them. This is why people often rationalize bad investments instead of admitting they made a mistake. Why individuals stick to long-standing beliefs even in the face of contradictory evidence, and why small commitments can snowball into deeply ingrained behaviors. Once we make a choice, especially if it is public, written, or requires effort, we feel a strong psychological pull to justify and reinforce that choice. Marketers, political leaders, and social movements leverage this instinct to build loyalty, drive action, and create a sense of identity around a cause or product. By encouraging small commitments, signing a petition, joining a free trial, or verbally agreeing to a belief, they increase the likelihood that individuals will make larger, more significant commitments in the future. The initial step serves as a mental anchor, setting the stage for progressively greater levels of engagement. The power of the foot in the door technique. One of the most well-documented applications of commitment and consistency is the foot in the door technique. This psychological tactic involves making a small, low-effort request first, before gradually increasing the size of the ask. Studies show that once a person agrees to a minor request, they become significantly more likely to comply with a larger request later, as refusing would create inconsistency with their previous behavior. A famous experiment in the 1960s by psychologists Friedman and Fraser demonstrated the power of this technique. Researchers approached homeowners and asked them to display a small sticker supporting safe driving. Weeks later, those who had agreed to this minor request were far more likely to consent to a much larger, more intrusive sign being placed in their yards. Their initial, seemingly insignificant commitment influenced their self-perception, leading them to see themselves as supporters of the cause, making them more likely to escalate their involvement. This principle is used in countless real-world scenarios. Retailers offer free trials because people who commit to using a product, even temporarily, are more likely to justify keeping it, leading to increased conversions. Nonprofits encourage individuals to sign small petitions before asking for donations, increasing the likelihood of financial support. Subscription services allow people to start with a free plan, knowing that once a user has invested time and energy into a platform, they will be reluctant to leave. By strategically structuring requests and engagements, you can create a natural progression that moves people from minor commitments to deep, unwavering loyalty. How commitment shapes identity and behavior. The strongest commitments are those that reshape identity. When people engage in behaviors that align with a particular role, they begin to see themselves as that kind of person, which reinforces future behaviors. A person who runs once a week may simply see themselves as someone trying to stay active, but if they sign up for a marathon, even if it's months away, they suddenly view themselves as a runner. This identity shift increases their likelihood of staying consistent with training, investing in running gear, and joining a community of other runners. This principle is the foundation of many habit-forming behaviors. People who make small dietary changes and publicly declare their commitment to healthy eating become more invested in the identity of being health-conscious. Someone who volunteers at a local shelter once may do so again, not just out of obligation, but because they begin to see themselves as a caring, charitable person. Brands leverage this principle by transforming their customers into members of a community rather than just consumers. Apple, for example, doesn't just sell technology, it cultivates a sense of identity. Customers who buy an iPhone aren't just purchasing a device, they are becoming part of an ecosystem, reinforcing their identity as innovative, tech-savvy individuals. Similarly, social movements don't just ask people to support a cause, they shape self-perception, turning supporters into activists, advocates, and lifelong believers. How to use commitment and consistency to influence others. To ethically harness the power of commitment and consistency, consider these strategic applications. 1. Start small. Get people to take a low-risk, easy action first. This could be a free sign-up, a minor pledge, or a simple agreement to a statement. Small steps open the door to larger commitments. 2. Encourage public declarations. Public commitments are stronger than private ones. When people announce goals, sign pledges, or declare beliefs in front of others, they feel more compelled to uphold them. 3. Use written agreements. Contracts, petitions, and written affirmations deepen commitment. Even signing a digital agreement increases psychological ownership of a decision. 4. Create identity-based motivation. Frame commitments as part of an individual's identity. Instead of encouraging someone to try vegetarian food, reinforce their choice as becoming a more environmentally conscious eater. 5. Build progressive engagement. Structure experiences so that each step naturally leads to the next. Free trials lead to subscriptions, small donations lead to larger ones, minor activism leads to deeper involvement. Commitment and consistency are two of the most underestimated forces in persuasion. Once a person takes an initial step, they begin a psychological journey that reshapes their decisions, beliefs, and self-perception. A single small action can create a ripple effect, leading individuals down a path of greater involvement, stronger convictions, and lasting influence. By understanding and applying these principles, you can guide behaviors, build loyal communities, and create movements that sustain themselves over time. The key is not coercion, but voluntary commitment, allowing people to take ownership of their decisions in a way that naturally reinforces long-term consistency. Chapter 14. The Psychology of Authority: How Perceived Power Shapes Influence. Throughout history, authority has been one of the most potent forces of influence. The mere presence of an authoritative figure can shape behaviors, override personal beliefs, and inspire unwavering obedience, even when the actions being commanded seem irrational or unethical. People are wired to respond to authority because, in most cases, deference to knowledgeable, powerful figures has ensured survival, order, and progress. Whether in governments, corporations, social groups, or personal relationships, authority creates a sense of structure and direction, guiding individuals to act in ways they might not have chosen on their own. The power of authority is not necessarily derived from brute force or direct coercion. Instead, it often works through perceived legitimacy, expertise, and social expectations. When people believe someone has the right to command, whether due to status, knowledge, or a symbolic position of power, they instinctively comply, even if it conflicts with their personal desires or moral compass. This tendency has been demonstrated in psychological experiments, historical events, and everyday social interactions, revealing just how deeply ingrained the obedience reflex is in human behavior. In this chapter, we will explore why authority is so effective, how it can be used to shape opinions and actions, and how one can cultivate an authoritative presence to enhance persuasion. Understanding this principle will not only help you recognize when you are being influenced, but will also allow you to harness authority ethically, to lead, inspire, and guide others effectively. Why people obey authority without question. One of the most famous demonstrations of obedience to authority comes from Stanley Milgram's experiment in the 1960s. In this study, participants were instructed to administer increasingly severe electric shocks to a person in another room whenever they answered a question incorrectly. The shocks were not real, but the participants did not know this. As the intensity of the supposed shocks increased, the victim, an actor, would scream in pain, beg for the experiment to stop, and eventually fall silent. Despite their visible distress, most participants continued to administer shocks simply because an authoritative figure in a white lab coat insisted they continue. This experiment revealed a powerful truth about human nature. When authority commands, most people obey, even against their own moral judgment. Participants were not inherently cruel. They were ordinary individuals who found themselves in a situation where authority dictated their actions. The presence of formal attire, scientific setting, and assertive language gave the experimenter a legitimate aura of power, compelling participants to override their instincts and follow orders. The reason for this response lies in social conditioning and hierarchical structures. From childhood, people are taught to trust experts, obey teachers, follow rules, and defer to those in higher positions. This conditioning remains throughout adulthood, where bosses, law enforcement, and political leaders continue to serve as authoritative figures. The social order depends on obedience, and while this system has many benefits, it also makes people vulnerable to manipulation when authority is misused. The symbols and triggers of authority. Not all authority is enforced through direct commands. Often, authority is established through subtle signals and symbols that trigger automatic compliance in others. These symbols convey status, knowledge, or legitimacy, leading people to accept statements, follow instructions, or make decisions without question. Some of the most common triggers of authority include titles and credentials. People are more likely to believe and obey individuals with formal titles like doctor, professor, CEO, or judge. Academic degrees, professional certifications, and affiliations with prestigious institutions also enhance credibility. Uniforms and formal attire. Police officers, medical professionals, military personnel, and corporate executives command immediate respect due to their visual representation of authority. Even a well-tailored suit or white lab coat can elevate perceived expertise. Confidence and assertiveness. People associate certainty and strong speech patterns with knowledge and leadership. An individual who speaks with conviction, maintains eye contact, and uses decisive language is often perceived as an authority, regardless of their actual expertise. Endorsements and associations. Authority is often transferred through associations with recognized figures or institutions. A brand endorsed by a trusted expert, a book with a foreword by a well-known leader, or a product backed by scientific studies will command greater influence than one without authoritative validation. Scarcity and exclusivity. People assume that exclusive knowledge or restricted access is a sign of authority. Secretive government documents, insider business strategies, and privileged information all carry a sense of power, making those who possess them seem more authoritative. By understanding these symbols, you can both recognize when they are being used to influence you and strategically apply them to enhance your own presence, leadership, and persuasive ability. How authority shapes beliefs and decisions. Authority not only influences obedience, but also has a profound effect on belief formation. When people hear information from a perceived expert, they are far more likely to accept it as truth, even without critical analysis or verification. This is why misinformation can spread rapidly if it comes from an authoritative figure, even when the facts are questionable. For example, during the early 20th century, cigarette companies used doctors in advertisements to endorse smoking. At the time, medical authority was rarely questioned, so the public accepted the idea that smoking was safe or even beneficial. Decades later, when legitimate medical studies revealed the dangers of smoking, the public faced cognitive dissonance. They had to reconcile their previous trust in medical authority with the new evidence. In politics, leaders use official speeches, expert panels, and authoritative branding to shape public opinion. When people hear a claim from a government official or a renowned economist, they are more likely to accept it than if the same statement were made by an unknown individual. The perception of credibility often outweighs the actual validity of the argument. This psychological tendency also explains why financial advisors, legal experts, and high-ranking executives command such strong influence, even when individuals do not fully understand complex financial plans or legal contracts. They trust the expertise of those who do. As a result, authority figures wield immense power in shaping financial decisions, health choices, and political beliefs. Cultivating an authoritative presence. Understanding the psychology of authority allows you to not only recognize its effects, but also cultivate your own authoritative presence to enhance leadership and persuasion. Whether in business, public speaking, or personal influence, establishing authority requires a combination of expertise, confidence, and strategic positioning. To build authority effectively, consider the following strategies. 1. Develop expertise. People trust individuals who demonstrate deep knowledge in their field. Continuously educate yourself, stay updated on industry trends, and position yourself as a subject matter expert through writing, speaking engagements, and thought leadership. 2. Command presence through confidence. Speak with clarity, avoid hesitations, and project certainty. Confidence, even when not backed by absolute knowledge, increases perceived authority. 3. Use titles and associations. If you hold professional titles or credentials, display them prominently. Align yourself with authoritative institutions, reputable brands, and respected figures to enhance credibility. 4. Master nonverbal authority. Signals, posture, eye contact, attire, and vocal tone play a crucial role in commanding respect. A person who looks and sounds authoritative will naturally be treated as such. 5. Leverage social proof. When others vouch for your expertise, it amplifies your authority. Collect testimonials, endorsements, and case studies that showcase your credibility. Authority is one of the most powerful tools of influence, shaping societies, institutions, and personal interactions. However, it carries a dual edge. When used ethically, it fosters leadership, trust, and stability. When misused, it can lead to manipulation, blind obedience, and even societal harm. Recognizing the mechanisms of authority allows you to navigate its influence, protect yourself from deceptive power structures, and wield it responsibly in your own pursuits. As we conclude this exploration of psychological influence, remember that mastering these principles is not just about persuading others, but about understanding human nature itself. Influence is not about coercion, but about guiding decisions in a way that aligns with human instincts, values, and perceptions. True mastery of influence lies in using these insights with integrity, wisdom, and purpose.